Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. The church was full. Every pew lined with friends and family who had flown in, driven for hours, or carved time out of their busy lives just to see us say the words that were supposed to change everything. The flowers were fresh, the music soft, the atmosphere full of anticipation. I stood at the altar in my suit, smiling nervously as the doors opened and she walked in, dressed in white, holding her bouquet like it was the crown she had been waiting her whole life to wear. She smiled at me, and for a second I believed the smile. For a second I believed this was the beginning of a new life. Everyone turned their heads, whispering about how beautiful she looked, and I told myself I was the luckiest man in the room. The ceremony moved forward like every other I'd ever seen. Vows were exchanged, promises spoken. I looked at her, thinking about the nights we had stayed up talking about our dreams, the way she used to hold my hand as if it anchored her to the world. Everything seemed perfect. Then the pastor asked that age-old question, the one nobody ever expects to hear answered. If anyone objects to this union, speak now or forever hold your peace. The silence that followed felt heavy. I was already preparing to move past it, to continue, when suddenly a voice cut through the quiet. I object. It came from the back of the church. Every head turned, including mine. There he was, her ex. The man she had told me was in her past. The one she said had broken her heart beyond repair. He stood tall, bold, his voice echoing in the room, as if he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. My stomach twisted. The crowd murmured. I turned back to her, waiting for her to shake her head, to laugh it off, to tell him to leave. Instead, her face went pale, her lips trembled, and then she pulled her hands away from mine. I can't do this, she whispered. What? I asked, my voice shaking, my world tilting. She stepped back, raised her voice so everyone could hear, and said the words that shattered everything. I love him. I always have. I can't marry you. The church gasped as if a collective wind had been knocked out of it. My heart pounded, my vision blurred, but my body stayed frozen at the altar while she lifted her dress and walked down the aisle toward him. He met her halfway, grinning as if he had won some grand prize. Together they walked out, leaving me standing there, abandoned, humiliated, and broken in front of everyone I knew. I didn't chase her. I didn't beg. I stood still, numb, until the pastor quietly touched my shoulder, his face full of pity. Guests shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, others glaring at the doors she had just walked through. My parents sat in shock. Her family stared in disbelief, and I was left at the altar, nothing more than the punchline of her confession. The reception was canceled, of course. People trickled out, patting me on the back, offering empty words of comfort. Some said I was lucky to find out before vows were spoken, but those words didn't soothe the sting of public betrayal. I went home that night to a house filled with wedding decorations, gifts, and memories that no longer belonged to me. The following morning, I did something simple. I logged into our joint account, the one we had opened months before to save for wedding expenses, honeymoon plans, and a future together. My intent was to move my half, close it out, and try to erase her from the practical parts of my life. But when the screen loaded, my hands went cold. The balance was lower than it should have been, much lower. I clicked through the transactions, and each one cut deeper than the last. Hotel charges, expensive restaurants, shopping sprees at places I had never been with her. And the dates. Every single one matched nights she had claimed she was working late or out with friends. It wasn't just that she left me at the altar. She had been using our savings, our future, to fund her secret life with him. Every dinner, every getaway, every indulgence, they were all paid for with the money we had saved together. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I didn't scream or throw anything. I just sat there, staring at the truth spelled out in numbers and receipts. My chest felt hollow, but inside the emptiness, something solid began to form. I realized this wasn't just heartbreak. It wasn't just humiliation. It was theft, deceit, and arrogance. She thought she had walked away with him, victorious, leaving me broken. But she didn't realize she had left a trail behind, one that I could follow, one that gave me the power she believed she had taken away. The more I scrolled, the colder I became. I printed the statements, highlighted the dates, organized the proof. My heartbreak turned into something sharper. I knew she would come back eventually. Not because she loved me, not because she regretted what she did, but because money runs out. Fantasies are expensive, and real life has a way of revealing the truth. And when she did, I wouldn't yell or cry or plead. I wouldn't play her game. I would end it my way, calm, deliberate, undeniable. She had chosen her path in front of everyone, but she didn't realize I was already preparing mine. That was the night the broken groom began planning his revenge. After I found the transactions on the joint account, I moved quietly. Rage wanted to take over, but I wouldn't let it. Anger is loud, sloppy, easy to dismiss. Silence, on the other hand, is steady, undeniable. She had humiliated me in front of the world, drained our savings, and chosen him. The only thing I had left was control, and I wasn't about to give that away. I froze the account the next morning. The bank manager nodded with sympathy when I explained, even offered me coffee as I filled out forms. "Half of this is yours," he said firmly. "You have every right to protect it." I left the bank with documents in hand, proof that I had secured what was mine. I also left with something far more valuable: peace of mind. Days passed without a word from her. Social media painted a picture of a woman in love, posing with him, captioning photos with lines about choosing happiness. I scrolled through them once, not with pain, but with a strange sense of satisfaction. Every smile she posted, every image of them at dinner or on a trip, I knew had been funded by money she thought I wouldn't notice missing. But the thing about illusions is that they crack. By the second month, the photos slowed down. By the third, they stopped altogether, and then, right on schedule, she reached out. It started with a text. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. A few days later, another came. "I made a mistake. I just want to explain." Again, silence. Then came a longer message, paragraphs full of apologies, promises, and claims that she was confused at the altar, that seeing him had thrown her off balance, that she regretted everything. She wrote that she missed me, that she wanted a second chance, that we could still build the future we had planned. I still said nothing. When her words didn't work, she showed up. It was a Saturday morning when I saw her car pull into my driveway. She stepped out slowly, wearing casual clothes, no makeup, her expression carefully chosen to look vulnerable. She stood on my porch, hands clasped, and said, "Can we please talk?" I didn't invite her in. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "About what? You made your choice loud enough for everyone to hear." Her eyes filled with tears instantly, but I'd seen this act before. "I thought I loved him. I thought it was real. But he's not who I believed he was. He's irresponsible. He doesn't want commitment. I cut her off. "So you walked away from me, drained our account to fund your fantasy, and now that he's turned out to be a loser, you come back because I'm the safe option." She flinched, her face paling. "It's not like that. It's exactly like that." Her tears slipped down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. Please, I need help. I don't have anywhere else to go." I kept my voice calm. "I froze the account." Her breath caught. "What? All the money you thought you still had? Locked. The bank has the records, my lawyer has the copies, and I have every receipt." She shook her head, panic rising. "You wouldn't?" "I already did." The porch went quiet except for the sound of her shaky breathing. She reached for me, desperate, but I stepped back. "You need to leave." Her tears turned to anger. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "No," I said. "You will." She stormed off, slamming her car door, tires screeching as she pulled away. I thought that might be the end of it, but I underestimated her pride. The next week she began spreading rumors. Friends messaged me, sending screenshots of posts where she painted herself as the victim, claiming I had abandoned her and stolen her money. She never named me directly, but everyone knew who she was talking about. I didn't chase after her lies. I didn't defend myself online. I didn't need to. Instead, I quietly emailed a handful of people: the pastor who had married us, my parents, her parents, and a couple of close friends who deserved the truth. Attached were bank statements, highlighted transactions, and screenshots of her messages to him. The subject line was simple: facts. I didn't write a single word in the email body. Facts don't need commentary. By the end of that week, her mother called me, her voice heavy. We saw everything. I don't know what to say except, I'm sorry. You don't owe me anything, I replied. She made her choices. The rumors dried up quickly after that. People stopped pitying her and started avoiding her. Even the friends who had once defended her quietly reached out to me, admitting they'd been wrong. She had played her game in public and I had ended it in silence. Meanwhile, I kept moving forward. I poured myself into work, training, and building a life that had no room for her chaos. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And the more I grew, the more I knew she would eventually see it. That day came sooner than expected. 3 months later, I was invited to speak at a leadership conference. It was supposed to be about resilience and rebuilding after failure, something I knew better than most. I hesitated at first, but then realized it was the perfect chance to reclaim my story on my terms. The hall was packed with hundreds of people, cameras recording, lights bright. I stepped onto the stage, adjusted the mic, and began to speak. Not about her directly, but about lessons learned, the importance of respect, the strength of walking away from betrayal, the power of silence in the face of lies. As I spoke, I scanned the audience, and there she was, my ex-fiancée, sitting near the back, her posture stiff, her face pale. She had come, maybe out of curiosity, maybe to see if I was still broken. But what she saw was a man who had rebuilt himself into someone untouchable. When I finished, the hall erupted in applause. People stood, clapping, cheering, a wave of respect washing over me. And she stayed frozen in her chair, unable to clap, unable to move. The woman who once mocked me, who left me at the altar, who drained our account for her fantasy, now sat silently watching me rise higher than she ever imagined I could. I didn't look at her again. I didn't need to, because the real revenge wasn't in humiliating her, it was in becoming someone she could never reach again. And as I walked off stage, the cheers echoing around me, I realized she hadn't just left me at the altar. She had set me free. That was the ending nobody saw coming. After the conference, life began to feel different, not lighter, because betrayal never disappears completely, but clearer, like fog finally lifting off a road I had been driving for too long. People reached out after my speech, not with pity but with respect. They told me my words had inspired them, that my story gave them courage to walk away from their own toxic relationships. For the first time in months, I felt like the man standing in front of them wasn't defined by her choices, but by mine. She must have felt it too. A week after the conference, she messaged me again. I saw you speak, you've changed. I stared at the words for a long time, then closed the message without replying. Silence was still my answer. But she didn't stop. She sent another. Can we meet just once? Please, I need to explain everything. I made mistakes, but I still care about you. I almost laughed. Care? She hadn't cared when she announced she loved him in front of everyone. She hadn't cared when she drained our account to fund her secret life. She hadn't cared when she lied to our friends and made me the villain in her story. No, what she felt wasn't care, it was regret. Regret that her gamble hadn't paid off. Still, part of me wanted her to see the truth she had been running from. Not through my words, but through reality itself. I didn't block her. I let her watch from the sidelines as my life moved forward without her. The first sign that her world was unraveling came from a mutual friend. You know she's not with him anymore, right? They asked casually. He left. Apparently, he's already seeing someone else. It didn't surprise me. Men like him rarely stay loyal. He had wanted the thrill of stealing her away at the altar, not the responsibility of building a life with her. And she had traded everything for him. Her dignity, her reputation, her future. Now she was alone. But her downfall wasn't my victory. My victory was the life I was building. Work opportunities opened up. Invitations came in to speak at more events. I started focusing on things I had neglected during the relationship. Hobbies, friendships, even my health. Every area of my life was improving, not because I wanted to prove her wrong, but because I wanted to prove myself right. And then came the night everything came full circle. I was invited to deliver the keynote at a major corporate event. Hundreds of executives, leaders, and professionals gathered in a grand hall, chandeliers glittering above us. The stage was lit bright, cameras everywhere, and the audience waited in silence as I walked up to the microphone. My speech wasn't about heartbreak, it wasn't about her. It was about resilience, leadership, and integrity, the values that had carried me through the darkest months of my life. I spoke about betrayal only in abstract terms, never naming names, never sharing more than what was necessary. The message was bigger than me. But as I spoke, my eyes scanned the room, and there she was. Sitting near the middle this time, not hiding in the back. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her dress simple, her expression unreadable. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of her choices had finally pressed down on her shoulders. I didn't flinch. I didn't let my voice waver. I delivered every line with confidence, with clarity, with strength. And when I finished, the audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the hall, echoing off the walls, rolling like a wave. People clapped, cheered, even whistled. The energy was overwhelming, and her? She stayed seated, frozen, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, her eyes locked on me, her face pale. She couldn't clap, she couldn't stand, she couldn't move. Because in that moment she realized something she had never expected. The man she once mocked, the man she had walked away from, had become someone she could never touch again. I didn't look at her as I walked off stage. I didn't need to. Her silence was louder than her cruelest words. Later that night, a colleague told me she had left the hall quietly, slipping out before the reception. No goodbyes, no conversations, no excuses. Just gone. I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat in the quiet. My house no longer felt empty. It felt full. Full of peace, full of purpose, full of the life I had rebuilt on my own. I thought about that day at the altar, the moment she confessed her love for him in front of everyone. Back then, I thought it was the worst day of my life. But sitting there now, I realized it was the best, because her betrayal didn't break me, it freed me. It forced me to grow, to rise, to become someone stronger than I ever imagined. She had taken her shot at destroying me. But in the end, all she did was create the man she could never stand beside again. And that was the ending nobody saw coming. In the weeks after that night on stage, I barely thought of her. The emails and calls that once consumed me slowed to nothing, replaced by invitations, opportunities, and quiet moments I had earned. I spent evenings with friends who had stood by me, mornings running longer distances than I ever imagined, and afternoons exploring hobbies I had left behind when I thought my world revolved around her. But then one morning, as I grabbed coffee near the office, I saw her. She sat alone at a corner table, a half-empty cup in front of her, scrolling her phone with a hollow look. She noticed me and froze. For a moment I thought she might get up, but instead she stayed seated, her eyes pleading silently. I gave her a polite nod, no anger, no bitterness, and walked out. That single gesture said everything. She no longer had a place in my story. Later, through whispers of mutual friends, I learned the rest. The man she left me for had burned through her trust quickly. He wasn't steady, wasn't loyal, and left her for someone else. With her reputation in ruins and her family ashamed, she was scrambling for work and for sympathy that no one seemed willing to give anymore. The woman who once believed she could humiliate me in front of hundreds now sat in silence, ignored by the same crowd she had once impressed. And me? My life had never been fuller. My work thrived, my circle grew, and the respect I earned was mine alone. The wedding that never happened had been replaced with something far greater: freedom, dignity, and a future I owned. Looking back, I realized revenge wasn't in her collapse. It was in my rise. Her silence in the crowd that night was only the final chapter. The real victory was living so well that her memory became nothing more than a footnote. That was when I finally closed the book.